Hi everybody, this is an instructional video for 3.01 where reporters find their stories. I will tell you that this assignment is going to be kind of the precursor or the beginning of a story that you will be writing. Eventually that will develop and you will use almost through this entire class. So this assignment now is super important for you. I will touch more on that in live session, but I do just want to kind of make sure that you're aware of that. So 3.01, I have the assignment pulled up here, so I'm just going to drag it over. So for this assignment, first thing I need to make sure that you're aware of is that it is worth 25 points. Basically what this is it's a story proposal. So you are just proposing what you want to write about as far as your story idea goes. So there are some requirements you need to make sure that you follow. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of those. So when you're looking at the assignment, what you are going to be doing is you're going to be choosing an organization or a specific individual who has recently made news in your local community. So this is the first step in producing your own news story in the next unit. So like I said, this assignment is going to kind of push you over into the next unit where you're actually going to be writing a story about this. So this is something, once you pick this, you're not going to be able to change your story idea unless you absolutely have to. So it's pretty important that whatever you choose to write about at this point is something that you really want to write about. And also know that this is going to be developed throughout the class. So you're going to be using it more than one time. So just really make sure whatever you choose to pick is something that you're going to have access to, something that you're going to be able to talk to people about. Remember, we are in journalism, so you will be interviewing people. I'm going to talk a little bit about the interviewing process, so you can make sure that you know that there are ways that you can interview that you're not necessarily going to have to like talk to the head of CISCA or talk to the head of, whatever organization it is that you're kind of thinking about. So the first thing that you're doing is you have to pick something that's happened recently, and I highly recommend it's something that's happened in your local community. For example, in our area, we had tornadoes that happened back, whenever. We've had issues with uh, like crime in our area. We've had the school, someone in our school did something that was fantastic recently. Things like that. Those are things that you're going to want to think about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an example of something in my area, but you really need to focus on your own area specifically for the interviewing purposes of it, because you want to be able to contact people to interview, whether that is family members, whether that's people in the actual organization, but you're going to want it to be pretty local. I can tell you that many people have talked about their church. They've talked about the local school district. They've talked about, if there was like something that happened that was big, like the tornadoes that happened in Dayton, or we had something in our area where during the hurricane season, a young lady in our community raised money for the animals that were displaced. So those are kind of things that you want to think about. It can be as simple as something like that your church is doing to make blankets for people in Africa. But it needs to focus on your area specifically. I kind of want to make that like a really important part of this assignment. So what you're going to do is you're just going to basically provide an idea or an overview of and description of your story idea and why it's compelling subject for readers. Include who you think would be interested in reading the stories. So for my example, I'm going to use the young lady who collected money for displaced animals during the hurricane. So that would basically be the overview of my story, right? Why is it compelling for readers? Because she's doing a really nice thing and it's a good deed and it's like that heart, feel good type story that a lot of people like to read about, right? Who would be interested? Well, probably anyone in our community that would know her. Um, Even people outside of our community that were affected by the hurricane, animal lovers, things like that. Those are going to be the people that I would think would want to read that story. Okay. So that would be kind of what I would be putting in there. So my human sources by name. So here's where we're going to get a little tricky. You don't actually have to interview anyone in this assignment, but you are going to have to interview people later. So I may not know this young lady, right? Or I may. So I might know her, I might know her parents. If I do, I'm definitely going to send her an email or get on Instagram and send her like a quick thing and be like, hey, can I ask you a few questions about what you did? If I don't know her, this is going to be kind of your loophole. So if I don't necessarily know her, I might still try and reach out to her, but she may not respond to me, right? Might know her parents. So for me, I'm going to start interviewing people who maybe were interested in the story and say, well, what did you think about this? What kind of information do you think would be important for this? So you're reaching out to maybe could be your parent, could be your cousin, your best friend, could be a teacher, could be someone that you know that's read about that information and if they have an opinion about it or what they think. So that's going to be a little bit of your loophole. Ideally, who I would want to talk to would be her. Um, and maybe her parents or her teachers. I would maybe also want to talk to, if she raised money for, let's say, the Humane Society, I would want to talk to someone in the Humane Society. So I may not be able to talk to someone in her area, but let's say that the Humane Society or a local shelter in my area, maybe I could talk to them and find out, you know, how do we like go about raising money for your community or for uh, your uh, your center, or what are some things that you would need, or what are things that we can do. So those are the kinds of things where ideally, I would want to talk to who she raised money for and her and maybe her parents. But if I cannot talk to those people, you got to think outside the box. Okay, so that's kind of my loophole for you when it comes to the interviewing that you're going to be doing here in the next couple of weeks. So non-human sources. So this is super important. So in every um, article that you will write, or every report that you're going to be writing, you will have at least two human sources, preferably three, and you will also have non-human sources. And in many of the non-human sources, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I want to say you have to have at least two. It just be one, but I always say have two just to be safe. So non-human sources are basically you getting on your research hat, you getting on the internet or you going wherever and pulling up information. So what does that mean? So let's say I'm researching or I'm looking into the young lady who collected a bunch of money for the displaced animals, right? During the hurricane. What I might look up would be how many animals were displaced during the hurricane. I would look up articles, I would look up research, I would look up information that's going to help me when I'm writing my article add to whatever it is that I want to say. Okay, so non-human resources means you're not talking to someone. It means you're looking up information and you are doing that research. So for this assignment, I don't necessarily need that non-human resource. Like, I don't need the information. I need who, or sorry, not who, but what that resource is. So if you're saying, well, I'm going to go to the New York Times and I'm going to look up whatever information on that person, then that's what you're going to be looking at. Hold 1 second, please. All right, phone was ringing, had to answer it. Okay, so like I was saying, when you're looking at the non-human resources, just make sure that you're pulling something from whatever you would be researching off the internet. Could be in a newspaper, could be a blog. There's so many non-human resources that you could use. And you're going to be learning more about non-human resources in the curriculum, but there are a lot of different places that you'll be able to look. Okay. So again, just to recap, super important that whatever you choose to do, this is kind of a subject you are going to be using throughout multiple assignments. So pick something that you're really interested in, that you find interesting, that you know you can get information on. Do not pick something global. By that I mean, don't pick something about President Trump unless it directly has to do with your community. This is what is going to be a very important part of that assignment. The other thing is, I know a lot of you are going to be like, my community is so boring, nothing happens. There are things that happen in your community. You just have to go out and find it. Okay, so make sure that you're looking. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, if you live in a really tiny town, it could be the next bigger town next to you if you would like it to be. So like I live in a smaller town, and I would maybe go look at something that would happen in Dayton, right? Which is like 15 or 20 miles from me. But something in your area. Do not make it global, okay? Make it something in your immediate area. If you have questions, please let me know.